Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay, and an episode I've been looking forward to filming for some time now. It's the story of a vintage, one of my favourite estates with one of my favourite grapes, and I'm quite interested to see what the results are. But before we get into the story of said vintage, two rather important pieces of information. One of them is the upcoming Pick and Pay Wine Festival, the Stellenbosch Wine Festival with Pick and Pay. It's taking place at the Wanderers on the 5th and 6th of October. Pretty much every big name from Stellenbosch will be there. £225 a ticket, loads of great wine, some terrific food, artists like Majosi. I'll be there on a Saturday hanging out and enjoying some terrific wine. Tickets will sell out quickly, so put that in the diary for the Wanderers on the 5th or the 6th of October. Come down and join us, sample some terrific wine at Stellenbosch Wine Festival with Pick and Pay. And then some reading. Now, if like me you have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, reading time is not something you get a huge amount of. Between being woken up at 4:30 in the morning to go and watch Frozen again, to waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning because somebody's had a nightmare, reading time is normally sacrificed for sleeping time. But I do try and get in a little reading, and this is something I'm reading at the moment. Now, I'm a little late to the party because it came out last year. Oz Clarke, one of the great names in modern wine writing and wine appreciation. This is an autobiography. It's a story of wine, the story of his travels, the story of his travels through wine. It's compelling reading, and you don't have to be a wine anorak. You just have to enjoy a glass of wine and enjoy travel, and this, I think, is fantastic. And if you need a little bit of incentive, let me take you to the chapter on South Africa, and just the opening line, because I think this is brilliant, from Oz Clarke's Red and White. And this is the first time he went to South Africa. My travelling companion on my first trip to South Africa was a guy who'd been exiled for trying to blow up a train. That's a pretty cool start to a chapter. It talks through his experiences, his moral dilemma in going to South Africa. It was during the apartheid era, how he went, what he discovered, and his trips there ever since. And it also covers the rest of the winemaking world. There's some wonderful adventures, some terrific writing from somebody who is as passionate as he is knowledgeable. Red and White, Oz Clarke, well worth a read. So Oz Clarke is a bit of an icon in the world of wine. So too is a gentleman called Ken Forrester. And you'll remember Ken joined myself and Kevin Peterson a few weeks back for some of Ken's wine at KP's event up at the Kruger, his legacy experience to raise money for conservation and in particular to support the fight against rhino poaching. And in between some terrific work on conservation over that weekend, we did enjoy some fantastic wine. And one of the conversations that Ken and I had off camera involved the story of his wine. And it's a conversation I'd had with the guy who works for him, Lo Strydom. Always look up with respect and admiration for a guy who's got two surnames, and Lo has both of them. He's a wonderful guy who I knew from his days at Ernie Els Wine, now working with Ken, whose daughter he just happens to be married to, or thereabouts, or engaged or married. A lovely guy, good friend of mine, terrible golfer. Between them, they suggested having a look at some wines through a period of years. So taking the same wine, but looking at different vintages. Cue the story of a vintage. So I've got not the FMC, which is the one you might have been expecting, the very high-end, expensive but magnificent, multiple award-winning Chenin Blanc, but instead one that's just a little further down the road, but not by much, and that is the Old Vine. Now, the Old Vines have become kind of hipsterish almost. People are bringing them in as the latest cool tag to throw onto wine, with good reason, because you've got so much history to a lot of those grapes and such rich produce that comes from them that it does add a real authenticity and a wonderful dimension to the wine that's being made. But sometimes I think it's thrown around a little casually and we forget what it actually refers to, and that is vines that do have that real backstory to them, and in many cases have been revived to make some quality wine. So here we have from the Ken Forrester team their Old Vine Chenin, and it is a collection of wines, in this case from 2000 through to 2017. Now, I've tasted a couple of them before, but certainly not the first two, and I'm really interested first of all to see if the initial offering, the 2000, has still held. And you'll see the packaging is a little different. It doesn't say Old Vine because they simply were at that stage. It wasn't part of the marketing spiel that now comes forth in the wine industry. At the point of these being made, they were 24 years old. So fast forward, and the ones at the end, you'd be going up to 41 years old in terms of age of the vine. And two things had me just a little nervous about this. One was when I opened it after the cork had broken first time. I wanted to give it some air an hour or two ago. Brought it out. There was a little bit of a fizz, a little bit of a puff. Was that a good sign? And then at the back, Ken Forrester himself, who this is 17 years ago, so he would have been in his early 70s then, that says at the back on the wine that it should be drunk within 2 years. So that means I should have drunk this 17 years ago, which clearly I haven't. So I'm going to give the first bottle a crack from Ken Forrester and Low Straden, my good friends at Ken Forrester itself. Whoa. Well, that's no surprise. The colour of that, you generally expect more in a test tube than you would in a glass. It's almost a marzipanish bouquet to that. The sweetness coming through, the richness. You would expect it to have got richer. The colour suggests where the wine has gone. You almost get that sense with older white wine, if it's aged really well and you enjoy drinking it as opposed to spitting out the first mouthful and dashing off for a glass of water, that in a good sense you're almost chewing the wine, you're eating it, it's got just so much texture to it. To be honest, really not sure. It's slightly musky, a bit of marzipan as I said. Let's give it a go. If I keel over now after one glass, well, Ken Forrester, it's all your fault. I'll be honest, it is past its best. You could drink it, but you probably wouldn't really want to. It's got to become a very intense grapefruit, so it's got that bitterness to it. You can still taste some of the taste. It's actually quite smooth, but just the palate has got that abrasion that suggests the years haven't been quite as kind. I think it's still in a lot better condition than you'd expect most Chenin Blancs to be from a middle of the road range from 19 years ago. And I'll probably test it out on a few other people later on this evening, see what they think. So nose not too bad. Yeah. Just lost a little of that magic, lost a little bit of life, just got a little bitter, a little old, a little tired of life, a little cynical. Ah well. I've still got 3 more to try, and I suspect it's only going up from here. Okay, so on to the 2007. I would have been 29, I think. Yeah, the Springboks won a Rugby World Cup. One of many good memories from that particular year. Packaging same as the later version, so starting to develop some familiarity. And this is now 12 years old. Now, the suggestion on the back, drink this 5 to 8 years. So again, expectations are modest, although now who's made the wine and where it comes from, I wouldn't be surprised if it is a little better than you might anticipate for something that should have been drunk, according to this, by 2015. So I will give it a try. I did open it a little earlier and then just pop the cap back on. Oh, that's still also very yellowish, a 14-year-old Chenin. Again, that test tube look. Definitely a sharper nose. A bit more fruit coming out there, away from the marzipan. Almost a little bit of pineapple coming through there. Not a bad colour. So that's that pineapple juice colour to it. Not really sickly, sweet, syrupy, give you diabetes within 3 minutes of drinking it. This, of course, won't. This will just put a smile on your face and make you a better person, make you want to save penguins and protect rainforests. Now again, not at its absolute best, but definitely a step ahead from where that earlier wine was. So the 2000, we know, sadly has been and gone. The 2007, a bit more structure to it, not quite as bitter. It's still sharpish, but you can still pick up a bit of fruit coming through there. It's still nice and smooth, just very so slightly jarring because of that bitterness on it. But again, it's the it's the history, and it's while you're drinking it. When I drink a bottle of older wine, I think, well, where was I? What was I doing? Where was Dan's life in 2007, as opposed to where it's gone now? And that wine has quietly been making its journey as my life has meandered along since then. And the wine has just about survived until now. I survive. Yeah, so definitely in a better place than that 2000, but probably not quite as good a place as it was 3 or 4 years ago when it was suggested that we do drink this. So lost just a little, but still so fascinating to think back. Where was I in 2007? What was I doing? What was my life like as this wine was taking shape and then quietly making its way through to 2019 and finding its way into my cellar? So on to 2014. Now, this one I'm particularly excited about. The sign of a 5-star platter sticker is never a bad one, but more that I've had this wine before. A couple of years since the last bottle. Really enjoyed the 2014, as clearly did Mr. Platter and his army of judges. And I remember it as being just a great expression of the Chenin Blanc for which Ken has become so celebrated right around the world. And there are a lot of good things about Ken, just as a person himself. He's a wonderful raconteur. You can ask him a question, go and play 18 holes of golf, come back and he's still finishing it off. Warm smile, really engaging guy, but also some great practices on the farm. They don't use herbicides, they don't use pesticides, they try and involve their labour in the development of the farm and the estate. They're very forward thinking in terms of their practice of managing the business. And then there are added bonuses. 96 Winery Road, the restaurant that Ken co-owns with Martin Maynard, who also makes some terrific wine, is a superb spot. I've eaten many wonderful meals there. But headlining it all is this Chenin Blanc, and it's a wine that Ken's really passionate about. Probably the only downside is that some of the other wines he makes, which can be really good, are almost forgotten about. The Three Halves or the Renegade, because the Chenin headlined by the FMC is just such rock star stuff. And then this as well. To think that this is not the leading wine in the offering, it's not the top Chenin, that this is a tier down, and yet it's got 5 stars from Platter and it's been given thumbs up right around the world, means they are doing something rather special with their Chenin Blanc. So this is the 2014 already. The colour is paler, there's still that yellowish hue, but whereas the previous two were pineapple concentrate, this has got a bit more thatch to it, a little bit more sunlight. Oh, and a lovely breath of fresh fruit. That nose. And that's still 5 years old, and for a lot of South Africans, a 5-year-old white wine, good God, no, take it away. If it wasn't made yesterday, I'm not drinking it. A little bit of effervescence at the bottom. Let's give it a crack. Oh yes. So there's a real history lesson this, in that in drinking the 2014 you can see exactly where the other two wines have come from. There's a big round grapefruit mouthfeel to this, and you can see what that has been distilled down into in the old varieties have lost a little bit of the surrounding palate and become just a little sharper and bitterer for it, whereas here that grapefruit forms part of a broader mouthfeel. The colour is delightful. It's probably coming towards the end of its run, maybe only another year or two left in this, but right now it's going to sit beautifully, not just on its own, but with the right kind of food. For me, the right kind of food with Chenin is headlined by curry. We often think of curry with a beer, but I think we spoke about it several times during the Chenin Blanc promotion from a few months ago, that a Chenin Blanc just cuts beautifully through the spice and richness of a curry, and this right now is calling out for a dash down to your local Indian restaurant, hopefully with a BYO policy, and polish off the rest of this with a vindaloo, or perhaps even a slightly sweeter seafood style curry. Either way, it's going to cut through delightfully. Food will complement the wine, wine will do likewise, and the end result is that you've made the best of what Ken Forrester has made the best of in terms of his grapes. It's now 5 years old, aged really nicely. You can see why it got that 5-star award. This beautiful balance, and a really nice wine. So the story of this vintage is almost done, with just one to go. and that is the newest of the lot that I have. Now, I think the 2018 is out, I'm almost certain it is, probably not too long until the 19 is along, but I thought 17 would be good. It's just given it a couple of years to find a little balance and to make sure that it's in a really nice space. So this is the youngest of the four, and a quick look will attest to that. It is the palest of the four as well, and that is also the most fragrant. More tropical fruit than the slightly sharper of the four. Quite a difference between those two, and it's really just down to the age. This one's still a lot more delicate, still a lot more understated, hasn't built up the way that that 2014 has done. So where that 2014, right over the big pile of the aforementioned Vindaloo, this on its own, I think, would sit really nicely, or with some slightly more delicate food. Still wouldn't be bad with the curry, but just not quite as intense as that 2014. And while all four are certainly different, there is a common thread that winds its way through the quartet of Ken Forrester Chenins. They're not wildly different because you wouldn't expect them to be. It's all the same grape, made by the same person, made in the same place. But you can see how through the years, the grape, the nature of it, from the colour to the texture to, most importantly, the palate, has changed quite dramatically, as it should be. Now, I still think that there's a place for wines going back 15, 20 years. This particular one maybe hasn't lasted quite as well, but remember, it's a little more middle of the range. Try that bottle of FMC, and at 15, 20 years old, and it's been kept the right way, much like a good Chardonnay, it could be amazing. But the 2014 and the 2017 in particular, absolutely lovely. That 2007 maybe just tipped over the edge a little, but still some pleasure to be gained from it. I think this particular range, as they say at the back of the more recent bottles, that 5 to 8 year period is probably about ideal, and maybe push it towards the end and see how they last. So buy a case, and then just as the years progress, a really nice way of comparing wine. And it's also a lovely way of remembering your own history. What was I doing? Where was I in these particular years? But also celebrating the history of a terrific estate that's done so much for both Chenin Blanc and for South African wine. Ken Forrester, has been a lot of fun. Thank you, and thank you, Lo. And here's some more great South African Chenin Blanc. Cheers.